Welcome to Meet the Professional. It's May 2020 and we are currently in lockdown at the moment. However, we have some amazing alumni joining us today to share a wealth of knowledge and experience with you to help you think about your future, your employability, and how to perhaps move forward in your career. So they've got some great advice and some tips to share with you today. So please feel free to ask questions. There is a question tab just there on your toolbar. So please submit any questions for our alumni, or if you have more general careers questions, we have got colleagues behind the scenes picking those up today. In terms of the webinar itself, this is being recorded and can be shared with peers afterwards. So if your friends or people that you know want to access this afterwards, there will be a link available on the YouTube channel, the Careers Service YouTube channel. And if you do have any issues or problems throughout the webinar, please just raise your hand and one of the team will come and pick up that query. I'm going to hand you over now to Miriam, my colleague from the alumni team. So over to you, Miriam.
Hi, I'm Miriam Gaffney, and some of you may already know me from our connections on LinkedIn. So hello to those students. I work at the University of Manchester in alumni relations, and I work with our alumni to organise events like this to help our students with employability and gain careers advice. We've had some technical issues this morning, so we have Greg and Joe both logged in as my colleague Adil. Please don't be confused by the fact that their names are incorrect on their screen. And we're due to be joined by Ricardo very shortly, who is having some similar technical issues. In the meantime, we'll carry on. And could I ask each alum to introduce themselves? So Tamana, could we start with you?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Tamana, everyone calls me Tam. I went to the University of Manchester in 2012 and graduated in 2015. I studied maths with business and management, and I'm now currently a senior data scientist at Jaguar Land Rover, still based in Manchester. That's me.
Thank you, Tamana. Amar?
Thanks.
Hi everyone, my name is Amar. I studied at Manchester from 2015 to 2018, did pure maths. I got to the end of my third year, didn't really know what I wanted to do, but kind of picked up an affinity for coding. So I went on to study a master's in computer science at the University of Bristol. I finished that just this September, and now I work as a data analyst at Ernst & Young, where I've been for the past 8 or 9 months, I think.
Thank you. Leon.
Thank you very much, Miriam, and thank you for arranging this. I just realised, actually, I was prepping this, I've also got huge thanks to the University of Manchester Career Service for all of my career, which is maybe something we'll get into later. So my name's Leon Markham. I work at a software company called Salesforce. I graduated in, I should remember this, physics with study in Europe in 1997. So I think I'm by some margin the oldest panelist on this. I got a job straight out of university, working in business software, in enterprise software. I actually had some ideas that I wanted to work in environmental consulting or something like that, and I went to the career service, and the person I spoke to, who I don't even remember their name, which is terrible given how much I have to thank them for. This guy said to me, you know, like, do you actually know what that means? And I was like, well, helping companies with environmental stuff. And he's like, I don't think you really know what that means. You'd have to do a master's degree. It'd take you a year. This is what you'd earn. You got a physics degree. Go and work in finance or IT, and then figure out what you want to do. And I got a job in IT, and the rest has been history. I've worked predominantly in London. I spent 2 years in the Czech Republic working for a startup there, and between 2012 and 2017, I worked for my current employer, Salesforce, in San Francisco, in the Bay Area. We're a San Francisco headquartered company. For family reasons, I had to move back at the end of 2017, and I'm one of a handful of people in my company who performs a global role from the UK. And yeah, thank you for inviting me, and thank you everyone for joining. This should be fun.
Thank you. Joe, could you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name's Joe Bronstein. I'm a twice alumnus of the University of Manchester. I graduated for the first time in 2012 with a BSc in maths. After that, I went and worked in the music industry as a professional viola player for 3 years after doing a master's in music, and then decided I wanted to have a family and decided on a career change back towards maths. So I'm now training as an actuary, currently work for ISIO, which was KPMG Pensions until the 2nd of March this year. And before I made that career change, I did an MSc in Actuarial Science to transition through to my new career.
Thank you, Joe. Greg, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Greg Sinclair Jones. I studied physics with philosophy at Manchester and graduated in 2011, which was at the back end of the last recession. And I found it very difficult to find a job. And after 9 months working in a pub and many unsuccessful job applications, I also considered environmental consulting, strangely. I managed to get an offer on the IBM grad scheme when things were brightening up in the graduate market, and then also an offer to train to be a patent attorney. And I went down the latter route because that's kind of what I'd originally intended. So I started as a trainee in 2012. You have to pass loads of exams, which are quite strenuous, similar to actuarial sort of career path as I understand it. And I became qualified in 2016. And the good news is that you can apply with just a physics degree. So I didn't need to do any legal training beforehand, but that's what all the exams cover. Excuse me, I work for a range of clients and help them get legal protection for their key innovations around the world. And my clients range from, I work for a small Salford University spin out and large multinational companies like Boeing and Square, a Silicon Valley tech company where I actually got to do a secondment for a few weeks in their San Francisco head office last year. I think you should consider a career as a patent attorney if you like the idea of using your technical background in a commercial context and across a broad range of technology. And it's not a career that loads of people have heard about. So yeah, happy to answer any questions on that front.
Thank you. And thank you very much, panelists, for giving up your time today to speak to our students. We seem to have lost Amar for a moment, but I'm sure he'll come back in. And Ricardo has messaged me to say that he's going to call in. So when Ricardo arrives, I will let everybody know that he's here for any questions. Okay, so the first question I want to ask is, what advice would you give to your student self or our current students about the opportunities available to them before they graduate and how that might affect their employability?
So I think I'll offer to dive straight in. And what I'd like to say is, when you are at university, it can be quite daunting to make that transition from academia to industry, as in real life work. But we know that the job market is a little bit more stale than it was prior to coronavirus, but you'd always apply yourself with as much passion and with as much effort as you would before. So in terms of how you'd go about it, I think it wouldn't be too different in light of recent circumstances. And that's just give it your all and give it passion as well, and be sure about what you're applying to as well. That's my advice.
Thank you, Tamara.
So I guess from my perspective, apart from the fact that I'm now kind of desperately sad that I didn't become a patent attorney because it sounds awesome. I think in general, and talking about going into the job market at the tail end of the last recession, who knows what the job market is going to be like? There's a lot of graduate employers that still say they're going to be employing graduates, but it's likely to be different than it was before. And I think we're seeing a huge change in what's happened with the economy. I mean, look what's happened in the UK. The government is paying the wages of like tens of millions of people it wasn't before. This is the fastest movement to a centrally controlled economy that we've seen in any country since the war. Like, these are incredibly challenging times. So a lot of things are going to be different, and that's going to be scary in some ways. But I think it's also going to give huge opportunities. There's huge positive things coming out of this. And if you look at the way that we as a society have mobilized around coronavirus, it's been really impressive. And if you look at the other major problem that we've got to face of climate change, I think the people and the governments, we're probably going to come out of this with a renewed confidence that, hey, we can act together in the same way that we did in the post-war period. So I think there's going to be a ton of opportunity. But the way I would think about it, and the advice that I'm giving to people that I'm mentoring, is, you know, keep building your skills, live frugally, and reevaluate the market. And what I mean by that is the skills that are going to help you in most careers. There's some certain generic skills. There's speaking, there's communicating, and whether you are the kind of person who, you know, wants to join a sports club and become on the committee, or you're a D&D dungeon master, or you want to join a local Toastmasters club, you can write, publish a blog, whatever you're into, build up those kind of skills. Coding. My company Salesforce has a free platform that will enable anyone to teach themselves coding at trailhead.com. There's lots of ways that you can learn the skills that are going to be needed and just keep yourself going. And to me, I think coming out of university proves that you're smart, but it doesn't show that you're yet really useful in whatever job needs to be done, unless it's very specifically tied to your career. You've proven that you're smart, but you've still got a ton to learn, and keeping up that momentum, I think that's really important. The second thing is to be really intentional about living within your means. No one knows whether we're going to come out of this and a year from now it's going to be like we managed to shake ourselves off and we're accelerating faster than we ever did, or it's going to be a longer, more like a deeper dip. Or more likely, there's going to be a mix where some sectors that were doing great are struggling, some sectors that we thought would take a long time to recover will do brilliantly. But I think the more that you are able to live within your means, live frugally, the more that you are able to make the choices, that you're not going to be required to, I got a job paying X and I'm going to need to be able to keep on living like that. And so I think, you know, being thoughtful, living within your means and figuring out what can you do to keep yourself having options, and then just keep on looking really intentionally at what's going on in the market. There's going to be huge changes. You know, some companies are going to hire, some companies are not going to hire. Some sectors are doing weirdly very well. I work in the information technology sector. We seem to be having a really good crisis. Other areas are really struggling, and who knows how this is going to play out. So keep your eyes open and don't be guided by what was happening 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, because that's more now than ever not going to be a great guide to the future. So for me, like, keep developing your skills, live frugally, and keep on reevaluating the market.
And I'll pick up on what's already been said a couple of times by different people. There's two main pieces of advice I'd give to someone who is at university now looking for potential employment. One is keep challenging yourself, and that picks up on what Leon was saying about developing your skills. Push your boundaries as far as you can, and obviously that's easier said than done in this situation that we're in this online age where we're all having to work remotely or converse remotely or study remotely. But, you know, for example, making a phone call rather than sending an email, you know, that might be a real step for someone who isn't comfortable on the phone. And actually just taking any opportunity to really push yourself and develop any sort of skill, which could come in handy later on when you're in employment, will prove useful. And just having that sort of mantra going on in the background is a good idea. In terms of the actual employability and career search, as it were, be proactive. And again, that's it's not like you can go to a careers fair and talk to employers there. You know, that sort of thing isn't happening in person now. But, you know, use LinkedIn, you know, push yourself in that sense, get yourself out there and just and be aware, like Leon was saying, about your options. Have a good picture of the market and and try to get a good picture of what you might want to do when you leave, which I know is easier said than done. You know, my situation is sort of different, but a lot of people go through their bachelor's or master's degrees and still don't know what they want to do at the end. And I'm sure, you know, many of us will have been in that situation or are in that situation now. Try not to let it get to that. Try and get an idea of your options and what you might be interested in doing now, as soon as possible. Because otherwise you'll get to the end and think, what am I going to do now? And you don't want to do that, really.
I think that's all really good advice. And the only thing I would add is that speak to the career service, because like Leon, they were really helpful to me and really gave me some very good guidance in terms of deciding what I wanted to do, as well as helping me actually attain that goal. And I was one of the people that left it to my sort of final semester of my final year to kind of work out what I actually wanted to do. And that's perhaps one of the reasons why I struggled to find work when I left university initially. But in that year after I graduated, I was regularly in contact with the career service, talking through CVs and cover letters and things like that. And it's, you know, having not really dealt with any other career services, I can't say, but I imagine they're probably one of the best career services out there. So make the use of that free resources. It's really valuable.
Agreed on both of those points. I also made good use of the career service, and it was invaluable, especially interview practice, that sort of thing, advice about applications to graduate programs and things like that. And yeah, there was something else I was going to say and I've forgotten. Come back to me.
So slightly different point compared to Joe. I would say that don't be afraid if you don't really know what to do when you get to the end of your third year. I think that there's too much pressure to kind of have your entire life figured out or your entire career figured out by that point. I mean, it's good to know that what you might want to do, but it's not the end of the world if you don't. I mean, purely by chance, I found something that I was good at, and this is why I then went on to do a master's in it, and then kind of found that I wanted to work in data analytics. So don't be afraid if you really don't know what to do. It might come then, it might come later, but you will figure it out eventually. With regard to employability, again, just be proactive. I maybe Joe can correct me on this, but I still know that the Big Four are still hiring and for next year's graduate intake, purely because this statistic might be wrong, but from what I've heard, they have about an 80% turnover rate after graduates finish their qualifications. Might be wrong, but they do have a very high turnover rate, so they always hire every year. And you know, certain sectors are still going to be booming, like restructuring, for example. So yeah, be proactive and don't be afraid if you don't know what you want to do.
And before we move on to the next questions that are waiting from the audience, can I introduce Ricardo, who is here but on audio only? Hello, Ricardo.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Fantastic.
Oh,
Would you be able to
fantastic.
introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, unfortunately, you're going to have to imagine how I look. I got a bit of a more beard and more hair than Amar, I think. Like him, I'm waiting for a good barber to reopen. Oh, it looks much more professional in that picture. But yeah, I am Ricardo. I am operational meteorologist in the Met Office, and currently I work in Anglesey, in North Wales, for the RAF airport that is here, doing the weather forecast for the pilots quite in detail for the day and the following day, telling them what kind of weather elements might be difficult for them for their operations. And I graduated from Manchester in 2013, and I only joined the Met Office in 2017. So you can see that there was a 4-year gap. And just to connect back to that question that has just been answered, one advice I could give you is that I wasn't sure what I was going to do after I graduated. I had some ideas and some venue that I wanted to go into, and it was Jenny. But I deviated a lot through those 4 years, and within that there was an internship, another internship, doctorate, to which I eventually dropped out, and also like small summer jobs such as tutoring or sailing teacher. So my advice would be try to be open to a lot of different opportunities, and just linking back to what has been said before, just trying to like make sure that you can live within your budget if you can, and that you don't stretch your lifestyle or expensive if you can. Of course, it's all a matter of personal circumstances, but generally, like, just be ready to try different things and try different avenues, and don't be afraid that some of them might be not suited for you.
Thank you, Ricardo. Penny, do you have any questions from the audience?
Yes, we've got one here. So for all of the alumni, what are the favourite aspects of your job? And of course, what are the least perhaps exciting or favourable aspects of your employment?
So I suppose, well, this doesn't really apply right now, but pre-lockdown, it was the flexible working aspect. So I thought that there was like a solid hierarchy to white collar office jobs. And I mean, there might be at other companies, but certainly not at EY. I came in, everybody was so friendly, and with the flexible working, I can work from home 1 day a week, 2 days a week, or if I have any sort of personal circumstances. And I really enjoy that. For me, I don't really deign to come into work. There's never a day where I'm like, oh, I can't be bothered. I'm always, happy to go in or happy to stay in, even if I have personal circumstances. So that flexible working aspect is really, really important to me now. Right now, of course, it doesn't apply because I'm working from home the entire week. But yeah, that's my favorite aspect. Least favorite, I wouldn't say I have one right now. But yeah, I don't think there's anything I can honestly complain about right now. So.
Can I just add on to what Amar said? So I very much echo a lot of his thoughts. And also add that one of my favorite things about working is just the people that I have around me. So I joined JLR about 9-10 months ago, but in terms of the people around me, when you transition throughout your career and move on, you still have people from before and you still build connections from your new place. And one of the things that I like to do is just network in professional life, and it makes me feel like there's loads of people around me, and that's just fun. So the way I like to think about work is having fun, and therefore when you ask about a least favorite aspect, I don't think that I have one, because I just like to create fun about it, and then it just feels like you're never working a day in your life. It's just part of your lifestyle.
Thank you.
I'll pick up here. So in terms of favourite, I mean, I also enjoy flexible working, and I think anyone who does will agree that's a great thing. I think personally, the thing that I really enjoy is I work for a consultancy, and we do very technical work, actuarial work, but equally we're using people skills as well. We're in meetings with clients and discussing issues and trying to get to the bottom of what they need us to do. And it's that sort of tandem approach of on one hand very technical mathematical ideas, but also implementing them using your people's skills. And that sort of parallel working is really enjoyable. And not all actuaries use consulting skills. There are actuaries who work in insurance who often don't see any clients at all. They're in an office all day. We're also in an office all day when we're in the office, but we have meetings as well with people, which is nice. Least favorite thing, again, there aren't many. I really enjoy my job. It can be stressful at times. I have 2 young children. I'm studying for professional exams. Work is very busy. Each aspect of my life in isolation is great and would be manageable on its own, but it's everything together which can get a little bit much. But that's potentially a way off for you guys. I don't know. But generally, the job itself is fantastic. Really enjoy it. Couldn't recommend it more.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yep.
Yeah, so I guess like there's different parts of my job that I've enjoyed as I've gone through the training process, and now that I'm qualified, it's kind of a fairly different set of responsibilities. But I guess I really enjoyed kind of the training program and route that all patent attorneys go through, because after your first year, you go to a course at Queen Mary University, and it's basically like going back to university on full salary, which is quite fun. And apart from there's some horrendous exams at the end, which are like 2 days after New Year's Eve. So I think that was possibly the most tragic New Year's Eve of my life. But that's only one New Year's Eve that you miss out on. And so I enjoyed kind of having that career path for the first 5 years of your career, when you know exactly what pay rises you're going to get because you're in a very sort of strict structure. And it's nice to have that kind of security in terms of progression from day one all the way through to when you're fully qualified. And now I kind of enjoy the responsibility of managing client relationships, and previously being able to travel to visit clients in the US and things like that. There are some things that I definitely don't enjoy as much as aspects of my job that I don't enjoy as much. I think it's very kind of, you have to spend a lot of time reading documents on your own, and I quite like socializing with people. So sometimes there's a morning when you get up and you have to kind of read a document, and it's like, do I really want to be doing this? But ultimately I think those days are few and far between. And I think generally, if you're interested in kind of the intersection of technology and law, it's a very rewarding career, and you get literally every day you can pick up a new case, and it can be about some completely random part of an aircraft that you've never heard of, or it could be about a new mobile payment system. And I think that's what keeps it really interesting. And often I'll pick up a document and don't want to read it, and then I'm like, wow, this is how this works. That's really interesting. So yeah, that's kind of it.
So I get this is awesome, and I'm feeling inspired. I think what I love about my job is, firstly, I've been able to bring my authentic self into work. Certainly at my company, we've done a lot of work and are really intentional about the culture that we want to drive, and making it accessible to everyone regardless of ethnicity, religion, sexuality, or ability. And I love that like just being able to bring your authentic self, that I can talk about. It's really tough dealing with kids during lockdown. I'm doing homeschool, and I can talk very openly to my boss about that. And we're all struggling. And although it's a relatively high-paced job, and I'm doing presentations to our senior executives, it's like that's the conversation we can have. And I really appreciate being able to bring my authentic self to work. One thing I've also really enjoyed throughout my career is being able to deal with people with very different backgrounds. I spent several years in Central and Eastern Europe, and people who basically lived under communism until 10 years before. Now working in the US with a lot of people who, have very different religious views, political views, very different worldview, but we're building stuff together, we're doing stuff together, and it's amazing building up this level of trust. And I feel like if everyone had the opportunity to do that, collaborating with people who maybe saw the world differently from them, a lot of the stuff that's going on now will be going a lot better. In terms of what I don't like, I think there's, I think I'm clearly, they don't ask people who aren't passionate about their jobs to come and talk to you about this, but there's some stuff that I found hard over the years, like learning how to maybe manage people who are more junior or not as motivated and as excited as I am. But it's also awesome having those challenges, because that's how you grow, and that's how you learn how to be a better professional, but kind of also learn about yourself. So there's nothing that I really hate, I don't think.
That's really great. Thank you all for sharing. That's been really helpful. What about Ricardo?
Well, I really like my job, mostly because it's like the application of somewhat of what I've learned at university, and also during the training course in the Met Office, and then trying to reason and applied physics to understand what the weather is going to be doing. So just like the seeing what's if my reasoning and my forecast is going to be happening and or not. And maybe just to be a bit more technical, one thing I discovered kind of a passion that I didn't know I had in a way. And one thing I really like is looking at maps. And within my job, I actually have to look at maps all days of where the cloud is, where these different weather parameters are moving across the country. So that's like a specific aspect maybe I like of my job. But among the things that I don't like, maybe given the requirements of the job I have is an operational job, is I have to have the forecast ready before the airport opens, and so some of the shifts are very early, and for example today I started at 5:30. I still get to finish early today, but yeah, it can be difficult waking up for a night shift or a early morning shift at times.
That's great. Thank you so much again once for all of you for sharing. We have got another question here. Did any of you take an industrial or summer placement as part of your degree? A resounding no?
Yeah. So
You
not
did?
as part of the degree. I did internships, if that's what you're asking. Is the question specifically degree related, or is it? I guess it's not clear.
Yeah, so lots of our students now have the opportunity to do a full year in industry, which is part of their programme. So it's an assessed part of their course. So the question is, did anyone do an industrial placement year, so the full year in industry, and then come back and finish their degree?
I didn't do an industrial placement, but while I was at university, I did 1 year abroad, which is not the same, but it was included within the grades and the curricula of the physics degree. Would that be related?
Yeah. And what were the benefits of doing that then, Amir?
So I studied in my third year of my master program. I went to the University of California, San Diego in the US, and you can imagine like it's a very great opportunity. You get to travel, meet new people, but that was a very good year and I really enjoyed it outside of academia, but also within academia. It was interesting to see how being taught by an American university differed, and what I liked and I didn't like of the new teaching method in a way. And yeah, you just get to like learn new things, maybe in a different format. Like it can be a bit more competitive in the US, but at the same time, it can be a bit more. You participate much more in class and in small groups, and it was a very it taught me a lot, and I grew. The experience made me grow, I think.
I've never heard of anyone not having an awesome time in San Diego. I also did study overseas, but I think in terms of an industrial placement, I didn't get to do it in my degree, but what I'd say purely from the outside, friends of mine who did, I noticed two things. So one, their immediate career after graduating, they found decent work very quickly. And also then, like, you know, a couple of decades hence, they seem to have followed a very good track. So I think those industrial placements are super valuable and highly recommended. I would have done one had I been able to do both studying overseas, but it wasn't really offered as part of my degree. So I no personal experience except those friends of mine who did. I noticed how it really helped their careers in the short term and medium term as well.
I have experience of sifting CVs and interviewing people. And I think if you see someone with an industrial placement, particularly to get into the patent profession, it's almost impossible to get work experience. But if someone's got a good industrial placement on their CV, it gives them a lot to talk about at interview stage. And it also makes their CV that much more interesting. I think if someone's got a whole year's worth of work experience and can talk about all the stuff that they've done during that year, I think it does really help you stand out. And I think that links with what Leon was saying about kind of immediate career prospects being very good. I think it definitely will help at interview stage.
I think the key thing to add to that is it doesn't in some ways matter. It does matter, obviously. You want to be doing something you like. If it is of interest to you to do a placement, but in some ways the experience is more valuable than what it is it may or may not relate to what you end up doing, but to have had that year of experience is massive. Like Greg was saying, it makes you stand out, and you'll feel much more confident going into a job. It's a twofold thing. It makes you more attractive, but it also makes you more confident. I definitely recommend it. I would have done one had I had the opportunity to. And I guess the fear maybe is that, you think, oh, am I delaying my graduation and my career starting if I do it? But actually, it's a year well spent. It would be a year well spent, for sure.
That's great. Thank you very much. Ricardo, have you got anything to add?
No, just that within the Met Office, I've seen I have a couple of friends that have done an industrial placement and joined with the Met Office and then joined the company thereafter. So yeah, definitely like a very good experience to have, and definitely not wasted time. It's useful both personally for your career and for the future.
That's great. Thanks again. So we've got a question here specifically for Tamana, if that's okay. So this person's asking, how did you get started in data science? And this person's graduating with BSc in physics, and they're interested in this sort of career.
Okay, well, thanks for the question. So in terms of how I got into data science, it was purely by accident, really. So after I graduated, I started as a data analyst, much like Amar, really. And what I did is I initially stepped back from the maths and focused very much on learning the industry which I was in at the time, which was retail, buying and merchandising, whilst also learning about data in real life. So that's a very important transition, to learn data analytics before going into machine learning and AI. And it wasn't until about 2 years into my career of analytics that I was starting to do predictive modeling and learning programming languages such as R or Python. So it's very much a journey, and I think the way that you go about it is quite important. I think trying to get into analytics first and understanding that it gives you much more solid grounding before you delve right into AI. So that would be my advice on that.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. So a couple of you mentioned previously about LinkedIn and networking, and that this is something we're really encouraging students to do at the moment, recent graduates, to really start looking at their network. They've got a little bit of spare time on their hands, so utilising tools such as LinkedIn. Do you have any tips yourselves that have proven really useful or effective in terms of your networking and kind of, and if you have been using LinkedIn, how do you use it?
Yeah, so I'll just jump in again, sorry. I'm a super big fan of LinkedIn, and I'm on it all the time. And I always scope out part of my day for LinkedIn and for networking, because it's very, very important to establish relationships, and LinkedIn can help with that. So you can always like request people who you feel like you've got a lot in common with, and just send them like a personalized message and say why you find their profile interesting. Some of them actually want to speak about their experience, so don't be shy to reach out to people, but also like take networking like quite seriously, but have fun with it as well. So
with LinkedIn, I have a really interesting story to share. Well, at least I think it's interesting anyway. So a couple of months back during this graduate intake, I had a really keen lad called, actually I'll withhold his name, let's just call him Bob for now. So Bob here messaged me, and he basically just asked me about my role. Now I was happy to help, and then he kind of let me know that he was applying for my role, and this is why he started asking me for interview tips. And to me, I thought that was quite brave of him, because looking back, when I was applying for that same role, I would have never done that. I would have never thought, let's go find someone on LinkedIn who's doing my job, who can kind of give me some inside advice, and without compromising the integrity of the actual interview process, I tried to give them the best advice I could. So I think LinkedIn, I think it's a great tool, and you know, be brave when you're using it. Don't be afraid if people, you know, don't reply. The best advice I got off someone was a couple of years back, and he said cold calling is actually great, which I could argue with, but yeah, I mean, get in touch with people that you have stuff in common with, or who are in roles that you might want to do, and ask them what they enjoy, and it'll give you a deeper insight as to whether you actually want to go down that role.
Yeah, I think the key thing to add to this is that if you don't do anything with it, you're not going to get anything from it, right? It's a brilliant tool if you put, you know, some thought and effort and understand what you're trying to get out of it. You know, it can be amazing. It can give you a job. You know, you just don't know. And like the guys are saying, you know, take a punt, send a message. Most people will reply and will be nice about it. They're just like you and me. And people do genuinely want to help, like Amar was saying. So, you know, if anyone messaged me out of the blue, I would more than likely reply in a very positive way. So you know, take a chance, I think is the key piece of advice there.
And the thing that's going to set you apart, oh, sorry, no, you go.
No, you go. No, you go.
I was going to be very brief anyway. I think the thing that's going to set you apart at interviews, certainly when I've been interviewing people, is that is to be able to show a degree of insight into the job that you're actually applying for. And what better way to do that than, you know, as Amar said, directly approaching people who are already doing that job. They're going to be able to tell you the little details that show that you'll be able to convey during an interview, that show that you've actually done your research, and that's the key thing that sets applicants apart. It's not, you know, it's not just grades. It's showing that you've actually taken an active interest in the job, because I think that's just reassuring from a recruiter's point of view in terms of your commitment to the role and your potential within the profession that you're applying for.
I think that's a really good point, and I guess just adding something to what Joe said, we're all human. I'll certainly respond to people reaching out, but it's follow up. Like, it's really nice feeling to be able to help someone, but let us know what we did. Like, is it the information that you're looking for, and are you clearly using it to move on to the next step? I think closing that loop is like, people who do that, you can just see them and you're like, that person's going to be wildly successful because they've just been really thoughtful and intentional about this. And I think, you know, like, people who do background research on the company, like if I'm hiring for a role and I hear that someone's been in touch with people on my team, that's awesome. You know, that counts for an awful lot, and certainly makes you look at then their grades and their answers in an interview in a different light, because you can see the work that they're prepared to put into being successful.
I can add that on the other side, one job I applied for, it was for an energy consultancy, and I did all the mistakes that I just talked about. I did very well in the interview, talking about my experiences and with my cover letter and CV, but I did the mistake of not researching the company history beforehand, either through LinkedIn or through the company website. And when towards the end of the interview I got asked that question, it kind of I dropped the ball, and likely it didn't really help towards my chances. So yeah, definitely it can be a very good tool to just learn more about the job you're applying, the company that you're going to be with, and if it's both to impress but also to understand if it's the place you want to have a work experience, either internship or more permanent solution.
No, I don't know how much the careers service talks about this as well, but there's tools like Glassdoor and also Blind, where people do sort of candid reviews, and they tend to tilt more negative, because people who are happy employees tend not to be motivated to talk about how happy they are, but you can get really good insight from those. And I think they're really, you know, it doesn't make sense to come to an interview and say, why is your culture so crappy? But figuring out the kind of questions that you want to ask and getting a sense of the culture. A lot of these tools are available now, which I think is just absolutely awesome.
That's great. Thank you everyone for your feedback. And just on that point, Leon, yes, we do encourage students to do thorough research really before they are attend interview or any sort of assessment centre, just so that they're familiar with the company, with the values, with the culture. And actually, a few students I've worked with have used a resource called Student Room. That seems to be quite popular alongside Glassdoor and Blind. So yes, we do try to encourage students to do that before interview. Miriam, have you got any questions there that you want to put forward?
I was just going to ask something of my own before I ask one of the students' questions that links to the last question. Would you all be happy for any of the audience members to connect with you on LinkedIn and follow up with you afterwards if they have any questions they think of later?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Thank you very much, guys. So audience members, please do create a LinkedIn account if you haven't got one already, and you can start by connecting with these panel members. Okay, there's another question here from one of our students. What would your company look for on a CV for someone to do your particular job, and what CVs might they avoid?
Sorry, was that towards me?
Towards to everybody.
Oh. I don't think there's some sort of set skills that certainly. So the person that interviewed me, it was more about my people skills and kind of what I knew about the commercial landscape at the time. Than it was my sort of hard technical skills when I was being interviewed. Because you can always pick up technical skills later down the line, but I did have this an understanding of the sort of role that I was definitely doing. And I definitely knew why I wanted the job. So I think being able to tailor your CV to the job that you're applying to is crucial. Don't just have one sort of generic CV that you send out to every single employer. It has to be specific to that company and specifically the skills which you might think relate to the job that you're doing. But for me, as much as I had those, it was also about the soft skills.
Brilliant. Can we go over to Joe? Because I know Joe Bronstein, you've got to leave very soon, haven't you?
Shortly, yeah.
Do you want to add something?
I mean, what do actuarial employees look for? I think the key is it doesn't have to be a new degree, but you have to show some level of aptitude. So everyone who's listening today will have a degree to be able to apply to be an actuary. There's no question about that. They look for STEM subjects. I think more a question when you're doing an application is what skills do you need to be a good actuary? Right? You know, for example, if you're applying to a consultancy, I've already mentioned you need some degree of people skills. So any experience you've got in that area is going to be useful. You know, it could be anything, but demonstrating the skills that that you might think are appropriate. And again, going back to LinkedIn, you can talk to people about what those might be. There's probably too many for me to list right now, but you know, it's worth just thinking carefully about those. The other thing that I'd recommend doing is companies often, as part of their sort of, at least in my experience, applying to actuarial firms, they have key skills lists which they sort of put out on their websites, and you know, attributes that you might want to sort of hone in on as part of your application. They actually have these lists around on their website. So you know, make use of that, do your research, and that will really help. Sorry, I can't be more specific, but I'm more than happy to go into details via LinkedIn or other means after this webinar.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Joe. If you need to pop off now, thank you for your input. It's been really invaluable, so I really appreciate that. But just leave when you're ready.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else on CVs?
One thing, when I applied for the job I'm doing now as a meteorologist, I was kind of very keen on trying to make sure that I understood the as much as I could about the science of meteorology, about different tools and technologies that are available. But I only afterwards realized that when at the interview process in particular, what they were really looking for was the ability to be probably public speaking, just being able to like present the weather in a confident way, even if often, as you probably are aware, like weather forecasting is difficult. You get it wrong, and it happens to all forecasters, but is part of the nature of the job. But at the same time, you have to transmit confidence about the things that you know or you don't know, and being able to speak in public to the customers or to the pilots in a sure manner, even with all the uncertainties of the forecast. It was something that they were trying to understand. And without realizing it, I managed to link it to, luckily during the interview, my experience as a sailing teacher was somewhat useful. Just being able to speak to tourists that were like coming to learn how to sail was relatable for the employer to the job I was applying for.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. I'm just kind of conscious of time that we're heading rapidly towards the end of this session. I'll just quickly do a shout out for the Career Service website. So there is a LinkedIn and CV guide that students can access and recent graduates can access. And it's pretty much a step-by-step resource on how to set up and utilize tools such as LinkedIn. And also there's some really great templates on there for your CV. So you know, if you're really stuck and you're not sure where to start, there's some really good pointers within that document that you can download and use to draw up your own CV. Miriam, I'll hand over to you to close.
I just wanted to say as well before we close, we are looking to organise more events like this. So any students who are interested in joining any events in the future, please do connect with me, Miriam Gaffney, on LinkedIn. And then my posts advertising the events will come up in your newsfeed. Thank you. Does anybody have anything to add to that last question before we close?
Yeah, I guess the only thing is just proofread your CV and covering letter or application form again and again and again, because it just looks really unprofessional if you have like a glaring spelling mistake or a grammatical error. And if you're interested in applying to become a patent attorney, I think anything to do with like the legal profession, your written communication skills and also your spoken communication skills are so important. So I think just get other people to read it as well, and just make sure that it's kind of immaculate from a spelling and grammar point of view, because I think that that can be the difference, to be honest, between your CV getting sifted in and sifted out, if there's not much between you and another candidate, because it's essentially just careless, and you've just got to be hard on yourself, I think, because it's it doesn't have to have mistakes if you take the time to finish off your application properly. And I know what it's like. It's the hardest thing. It's the last thing to go back and reread it again once you feel like you finished it. But just put in that extra effort and do it, because it really can make a difference.
Thank you. Has anyone got any last pieces of advice that they would like to give before we go? Anything that you wish somebody had asked?
I think one. Sorry, Leon, were you going to go? Okay, I think one bit of advice that I'd give is always try and follow your passion when you're looking for a role, and that will very much come through, in an interview. So when I applied at JLR, I knew more about the business maybe than the people interviewing me. So that did make it like a lot easier to get through, and it might mean the difference between you getting the role and someone with 10 years more experience in data science getting the role, for example. So passion and personality as well. So in programming and in AI, like this, it's a field which is known to be very, very technical, and a lot of the people in the field, maybe I'm generalizing, but they're known to be quite quiet or not too confident, not very extrovert. So personality is very, very key. So just get that across.
That's a brilliant point, and I want to add on to what Tamana said. If you look at like the movies and stories that we grew up on, it's kind of like there's someone out there who's going to make us happy, and we just have to stay the same, and that person will appear. And I think if you like sometimes I think we think about careers in the same way as well. Like there's a perfect job out there for me and I'm just going to keep on going. And you choose what passion you bring to that. And one thing I've noticed is like there's people who will deliver passion in whatever they're doing. And it might be, you know, there's a guy I used to work with who he'd had, by his own account, a misspent youth. He was working as a security guard in the software company I worked in, but he was like totally focused, engaged, and in the end he got a job in the company and now he's got a very successful software career. That passion is important, but don't wait for the thing to arise that's gonna pour magic passion dust on you. Like you bring that, that's your choice, that's the power that you've got. And there's some stuff, you know, as an early person in your career, you don't have control over where the economy's going. You've got little control over the experience you've got. And frankly, people are seeing so many CVs. There's a lot of stuff that you don't have control over. You have complete control over how you bring yourself. You know, as Greg was talking about, like, do you correct and double correct your covering letter and CV? That energy that you bring is totally contagious. Everyone will be able to feel it. So absolutely, you know, bring that passion, be engaged, and you know you'll get the results.
Thank you. Ricardo, is there anything you'd like to add before we finish? It's possible Ricardo has had to go. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, panelists.
Oh,
Thank you for giving up your time. Oh, is that Ricardo?
yeah, sorry, just technical difficulties here. My advice would be in following up, like just don't be afraid to make mistakes and just go down the wrong path. As long as those mistakes are like gonna make you learn something about yourself or about what you like, you don't like, who you who you want to work with, or which city or place you want to live in. It's going to be a good experience, and it's not going to be a waste of time as one might imagine beforehand. Just be ready to make mistakes, as long as if you can bring that passion, that energy, and that dedication, then it will help in the future.
Thank you. Right, thank you very much, everybody, for giving us your time this morning. It's been really great. Thank you. Okay, so we'll close now. Penny.
Yes, so yeah, once again, really want to express our thanks for you taking your time out of your busy schedules in between homeschooling and all the other responsibilities you have. Hope you enjoy the sun that is out today, so enjoy that. Ricardo, did you predict that weather today?
Oh, you're welcome, you're welcome.
Okay, so once again, thanks to our panel, thank you to our students that have engaged today and the staff that have been involved in setting this up. Once again, the offer is there from the Career Service. If you do need help or advice, please do contact us. We're here to help. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys. Cheers.
Bye-bye.